Dismissive avoidants always have exes who just won't go away. Here's why. Have you ever wondered why dismissive avoidants always seem to have that one ex, or sometimes several, who can't quite move on? It's like even after months, sometimes years, their ex still checks their social media, still wonders if they're okay, still feels emotionally hooked, while the avoidant seems completely unbothered, detached, and even cold. But here's the twist. That dynamic isn't an accident. It's not just about chemistry or unfinished business. It's psychological. There's something deeply magnetic about the emotional patterns dismissive avoidants create, and the effect it leaves on their exes is far more powerful than most people realize. Let's start with the core truth. Dismissive avoidants create emotional starvation. When you're with them, you constantly feel like you're reaching for someone who's just out of emotional reach. They give you enough warmth to keep you hoping, but never enough intimacy to feel secure. That emotional push-pull creates a powerful psychological hook, similar to an addiction. When the relationship ends, your mind doesn't register it as closure. It registers it as withdrawal. You crave their attention not because it was fulfilling, but because you were deprived of it for so long. The brain keeps replaying the relationship like a puzzle that never got finished. See, when most relationships end, people move on because they feel a sense of completion. They understand what went wrong, they feel seen, and eventually they can let go. But with a dismissive avoidant, there's no such ending. They disappear, ghost, or act indifferent. They leave you hanging mid-sentence emotionally, and that lack of closure keeps their ex emotionally circling around them, trying to decode what happened, trying to get some kind of validation that never comes. Ironically, this unfinished energy is exactly what keeps people obsessed. The more the avoidant withdraws, the more their ex feels the urge to chase clarity. Another reason dismissive avoidants have exes who won't go away is the illusion of emotional depth they project, without ever delivering it consistently. They often come across as calm, confident, and mysterious. In the beginning, this feels safe and stable. You think you finally met someone who's emotionally grounded, but later that same calm becomes emotional distance. What most people don't realize is that this distance activates your attachment system. It makes you overthink, overanalyze, and hold on tighter because your nervous system starts to confuse their coldness with a challenge that must be solved. After the breakup, that loop continues. You start to think, maybe if I had done this differently, maybe if I had been more patient. And so the emotional tether remains alive long after contact has ended. Dismissive avoidants also have a special way of being unforgettable, not because they were the most romantic or expressive, but because of how little they gave. When someone starves you emotionally, every small gesture, every compliment, every text, every rare moment of vulnerability feels magnified. You attach deep meaning to those small moments because they were so rare. So when it's over, your brain replays those breadcrumbs as if they were proof of something profound. You start to idolize the few glimpses of connection, forgetting the long stretches of emotional absence. It's not love that keeps you hooked. It's the intermittent reinforcement, that unpredictable reward that psychologists say is the most addictive form of conditioning known to the human brain. Here's another psychological layer most people miss. Dismissive avoidants unconsciously design relationships to end on their terms. They pull away emotionally first, they devalue the connection, and by the time the breakup happens, they've already mentally checked out. That's why they seem calm and unaffected afterward. They did their grieving during the relationship, while you were still trying to fix things. So when you finally break up, it feels to you like the wound just opened. But to them, it's already healed. This imbalance in emotional timing keeps their exes trapped in the aftermath, trying to make sense of how someone can seem so detached while you're still bleeding inside. And yet deep down, the dismissive avoidant isn't as unaffected as they seem. They may not show it, but they feel the loss differently. They just delay it. Avoidants tend to repress emotions rather than process them. That means they don't feel the impact of a breakup immediately. It hits them later, quietly when they least expect it, maybe months or years down the line. That's why they sometimes circle back, sending a random message, checking your stories, or liking an old post. It's not always because they want you back. It's because something triggered the emotion they've been avoiding. And when they feel it, they subconsciously seek reassurance that you're still there, still emotionally available, still part of their orbit. But by then, many exes are still emotionally waiting for the avoidant to realize what they lost, waiting for that text, waiting for that apology that never comes. And that's where the tragedy lies, because dismissive avoidants rarely offer closure in the way people expect. They often come back when they feel lonely or nostalgic, not when they're ready to truly connect. Their exes, still carrying the emotional weight, mistake that momentary return as redemption. But it's usually just a flicker of emotional curiosity from the avoidant, not transformation. So why can't exes let go? Because the dismissive avoidant never truly lets them end things emotionally. Even silence becomes a form of communication. The absence, the mystery, the emotional vacuum, it keeps the ex thinking, do they miss me? Do they even care? That loop becomes the prison. The ex's emotional energy stays focused on the avoidant, giving them invisible power even in separation. And the avoidant, knowingly or not, thrives on that distance. It lets them feel desired without having to risk intimacy. But let's be honest, this dynamic isn't just about the avoidant. It's about the kind of people who are drawn to them. Often, those who fall hardest for dismissive avoidance are empaths, anxious attachers, or people who grew up around emotionally unavailable caregivers. To them, love always felt like something you had to earn. So when the avoidant pulls away, it activates that childhood wound, and the ex becomes desperate to prove their worth. The more distant the avoidant becomes, the harder they chase. That's why so many avoidant relationships feel like emotional déjà vu. You're not just chasing the person, you're chasing the old feeling of not being enough, hoping this time you can fix it. Yet here's the liberating truth. The reason you can't stop thinking about your dismissive avoidant ex isn't because they're the one. It's because they triggered an unhealed part of you. They mirrored your fear of abandonment, your craving for validation, your belief that love must be earned through effort and patience. Once you start healing that, the magic spell breaks. You begin to see the avoidant not as mysterious, but as emotionally limited. You stop longing for their return and start feeling compassion for your own endurance. You realize that your loyalty wasn't weakness, it was love misdirected. When that clarity comes, something profound happens. The avoidant loses their invisible power over you. The silence that once haunted you starts to feel peaceful. The unanswered questions stop mattering. And ironically, that's when dismissive avoidants often reappear. Because what drew them to you in the first place wasn't just your warmth, it was your emotional availability. When you finally stop chasing, when you reclaim that energy and become self-contained, they feel the shift. The control they had dissolves. Your silence mirrors their own emptiness back to them. And that's why dismissive avoidants always have exes who can't let go, because they awaken something deep and unresolved, both in their exes and in themselves. But healing that connection doesn't come from closure or reconciliation. It comes from understanding the psychology behind it, from realizing that what you were chasing wasn't love, it was emotional safety. Once you learn to give that safety to yourself, the avoidant becomes just another lesson, not a lifetime attachment. So if you've been stuck in that cycle, still checking on your avoidant ex, still hoping they'll finally open up, remember this: they may never give you the ending you wanted, but you can still give yourself the peace you deserve. The power shifts the moment you stop trying to be understood by someone who was never ready to see you. Because in the end, it's not the avoidant who keeps you stuck. It's the illusion of who you thought they could become. And once that illusion fades, freedom begins.